Dr. Behrokh Khoshnevis is a professor of systems and industrial engineering at USC. He's also the inventor of contour crafting, which is a form of 3D printing. In our conversation, we discuss the future of construction, the future of manual labor, and the fact that in the near future, you'll be able to print yourself a house in less than a day.
3D printing includes a number of processes for fabricating 3D objects directly from a computer model or CAD model, computer-aided design model. And there are different processes that have been commercialized. Some of them use like with plastic filaments, some use with plastic or metal powder. Others use liquid photopolymer, for example, which is cured, solidified when light hits it. Pretty much all of them are based on layer by layer fabrication of the objects. They do that because it is very hard to build a 3D object the way a human sculptor, for example, does it. So they've tried to simplify the process by breaking the 3D challenge into a bunch of 2D fabrication, and then you stack these 2D profiles and to create a 3D object. Contour crafting falls within the class of layered fabrication or 3D printing technologies. And the distinction here is that contour crafting can actually build very large objects, which would be extremely time consuming and nearly impossible to do with any other 3D printing process. And the way that contour crafting manages to achieve that is by building with much thicker layers and still maintaining surface quality. Contour crafting has got certain advantages over 3D printing processes, and it is a platform technology that has application in different domains. So construction is one of them. Building large industrial objects is another one. Building public art pieces could be another one. Building boats and pieces of airplane and so on could be another one. I think the biggest potential of the technology is in construction of buildings, because right now we really don't have much of an alternative for automated construction of buildings, which is a pretty labor-intensive activity. In general, the advantage of 3D printing is that it is a fairly autonomous process. Once you submit the design to the machine, you really don't have to interact with it. You don't have to like go in there and change tools, for example. Conceivably, when you submit the architectural design of the building will be built without much of a need for human interference in the process. Yeah. Well, number one thing that it offers there is safety, right? Construction is actually the most dangerous profession. It has the highest number of injuries and fatalities. It is worse than mining and agriculture that follow that. All of these, of course, translate into cost to the end user. You know, construction companies pay a lot to insurance companies in order to protect themselves against the consequences of such accidents. One of the very first applications of robotics in manufacturing was actually in areas where people working in dangerous conditions. Robots are ideal for such situations. Therefore, I think that one of the biggest benefits of contour crafting when using construction is elimination of those kinds of human hazards. The next one, of course, is the cost. You know, right now in industrial countries, about 55% of construction cost is due to labor. So when you automate, of course, you save that cost, right? But that's only one portion of the cost that is saved. Another portion is due to material usage. You know, right now in the construction process, there's a lot of waste. You know, you may have noticed that anywhere that there's construction, typically there is a dumpster where they put the trimmings, material that have cured that are put in there, things that break. So it's a huge waste, right? And this technology has the promise of preventing all that waste. Because computer precisely controls the machine, and the machine adds very accurately what needs to be added, wherever it needs to be added. The only waste would be really what would be in the system at the end when you want to clean the system. There are a lot of other benefits which is hard to prioritize. They depend on the conditions, speed of construction. According to our evaluation, an average size home, about 2,500 square feet, can be built in about 20 hours. A lot of people ask me, well, who wants a house that fast? You know, why would that be appealing to be able to build a house in less than a day? And my response to them is that there are millions of people who lose their houses in few seconds. Yeah. Right? They get hit by earthquake, their houses burn down, there's flooding, they get bombed in the war situation. Those people definitely would want their house in one day, right? Absolutely. Or as fast as possible. Construction, the way it is done today, causes a lot of disruptions. As you know, wherever there is construction going on in a neighborhood, or when they're building a part of a road or whatever, there is blockage, there is traffic problem. So you better get done with it as fast as possible. The capability to build autonomously also provides for new opportunities, like being able to build on other planets, like on Moon and Mars, targeted for human colonization, and eventually that is going to happen. You know, we cannot just go there and explore forever. You know, we're going to go there and exploit the resources and live there and do a lot of exciting things that will extend human civilization in meaningful ways. So how are we going to accomplish that? We cannot send construction workers there to do it. Yeah. You know, maybe possible, but extremely cost prohibitive and dangerous, even more dangerous, of course, than here to human life. So this could be a good alternative. And when you accomplish this kind of autonomous construction possibility, you can also come back and utilize them on Earth. For example, you're aware of the catastrophic events like the damage to the Fukushima plant. They had to send real people there, real humans there to work under that extreme radiation condition. Well, if you have robots that can do that job of construction, then you won't have to put the humans at harm's way. And there are many other conditions that are like that. You know, construction in the polar regions is very difficult, right? It's extremely cold. Yeah. And yet, you know, there are activities like oil and gas drilling and so on. That kind of construction in that kind of harsh condition can be done by systems like contour crafting. Right now, all the structures are pretty much built with rectilinear, planar walls. Yeah. And that kind of geometry is really the worst one for structures. It's the weakest structure when you use planar walls. You know, I can easily demonstrate that with a piece of paper like this. See, this paper cannot hold its own weight when it is in a planar form. But if I curve it a tiny bit, it becomes many times stronger, right? So even with the same possibly cheap and weak material, you can build the stronger structures if you could curve them a bit, right? Okay. But building them by hand makes it very difficult to curve them because, you know, like if you're using like stick frame, how would you curve the frames? How would you curve the drywall? If you're building with poured concrete, you know, how do you make the form work? You know, it's possible, but it's extremely cost prohibitive again, right? Yeah. Here you'll have flexibility not only with respect to curvature for the purpose of attaining higher structural integrity, but also curvature to increase the architectural appeal.
Do you think that this technology has the potential to really help to drastically reduce poverty, or at least the living conditions of those in extreme poverty?
Of course, you know, governments in especially developing worlds are challenged by the problem of slums and poor living quarters, because those slums are where crime and illiteracy and overpopulation is. And of course there are a lot of health issues as well there. If you address the housing problem, the shelter problem, a lot of other problems will be solved, because according to Maslow, the American psychologist who became famous for his pyramid of human needs, at the base of Maslow's pyramid are food and shelter, right? Meaning that if people don't have these two essentials, they will not elevate themselves to higher levels of human aspiration. So you cannot expect, for example, people who live in a slum to come up with new science, to invent something, because these people are understandably preoccupied with trying to just survive at the bare minimum level, right? And they are occupied with a lot of problems that are constantly threatening them. So they do not have the peace of mind, they do not have the time, they do not have the means, basically, to be a part of productive population of the world. So it's a shame, it's a human waste. I personally believe that every human being has the potential and should be like Leonardo da Vinci. Right? There's a flaw in the system, or I should say it has not yet evolved enough. And that's why we are in this condition that centuries pass and we get a person like Da Vinci, like Einstein or whatever. Everybody should be like that, right? Because we are more or less all the same. I mean, we have what it takes, you know. We are equipped with the same kind of biological components that are needed for us to actually create concepts, arts, artifacts, you know, and everybody should be doing that. But it's a shame that, you know, a huge population of the world gets born and is constantly struggling to just live, right? Living should not be the purpose, you know. I believe we should provide the condition for human creativity. And so what conditions? We look back at the essentials. Everybody should have enough food, everybody should have a secure shelter. And then we can talk about other stages of human aspiration, right? Shelter is really important, and that's my passion, to hopefully be able to make some contribution in that direction using the contour crafting technology.
Currently, in terms of how these contour crafting machines are designed, how mobile are they? Can they be transported to more remote areas, or is that difficult at this time?
Well, it's not difficult at all. The machines come in pieces, you know. In a matter of 30 minutes you can take them apart and put them back together in another 30 minutes. So they shouldn't be difficult. They're pretty light because they don't have to handle a big payload. You know, they just move a nozzle around that has soft concrete material in them. So the machine doesn't have to be very rugged and heavy duty.
What effect do you think 3D printing, contour crafting, and other forms of robotics will have on humanity in terms of economics and employment?
The potential for humans is great, right? There is so much value in every human being. I guess only the future can demonstrate that. Because I think a future will come when everybody is super creative, that nobody really works for earning a salary in order to feed themselves or provide for themselves, but everybody is active, trying to be creative and solving problems and creating new paradigms, new solutions, new possibilities. Human civilization is relatively brand new. Okay? So, and if we look at the rate of change, we notice that as the civilization advances, the rate of change is faster and faster. So we should never take anything for granted. Like slavery took several centuries. The feudal system took much shorter. And the same will be true for the future.
Yeah.
And so assuming that everybody should have a job and everybody should work in order to earn, well, that's not necessarily the right assumption.
Yeah.
Right? Prior to Industrial Revolution, we read about the stories, hear about the stories where people worked for 16 hours or more in terrible conditions like in mines. Pregnant women and children were exploited on the jobs. Where did this regulation come from? These are the consequences of Industrial Revolution. Then now that we have 8-hour job, right? Children are not allowed to be exploited, and so on. All these new rights that we have gained. If you go back 300 years ago and talk about working 8 hours a day, that would look very radical and ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
But today, we take that for granted. But my question is, why not working 4 hours a day?
Yeah.
Why not working 2 hours a day, or why not working at all? You know, not working does not mean that you will not be engaged in productive activity. Not working could mean that at your own will and at your own discretion, distinction of what is needed, what is not, you work, and you probably work much harder, right?
Yeah.
Than you work for somebody's company or in a government organization or whatever, in order to produce some results that, in your opinion, are meaningful. You know, I have experienced this firsthand in different situations. People can be moved in many different ways. In my opinion, people are moved best in the direction of their creative abilities, right? There is nothing that excites people as much as creative work. And everybody is creative in certain ways. In my opinion, the ideal, or at least close to the ultimate ideal, is that nobody is going to be worried about having to do something, but people will worry about being wasted and not doing something that is meaningful, right? And that they passionately pursue what resonates with them. Yeah. And then I believe there will be an abundance of solutions and ideas in that world, where rather than worrying about all the shortages, rather than being greedy about resources and causing all these problems that we see in the world for each other over resources, there will be abundance of resources, because we will know, using our creativity, how to get what is needed, and we will grow enough, mature enough to know that we should not want too much beyond what we need, right? And the true meaning of value, right, will be understood, where everybody thinks and knows that the richest person is the one who makes the biggest contribution by their creativity, you know, to the betterment of human civilization and the direction that is going. You know, that's I think the true value. Yeah. To make an impact. Absolutely. Not to make money.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I have one final question for you. Our documentary is titled "Everything Will Be All Right," because we believe that with the social changes that are occurring and the technological changes that are occurring, that we will come to a point at some point in the 21st century where we will have the ability to feed, clothe, house, educate every human being on the planet. Do you believe that it is possible for the human race to make it at this point in the 21st century or at some point in the 21st century?
I definitely do believe that. I believe that humans are pretty resilient species, and there are a lot of things that threaten us, that they threaten humanity, and there are directions that are kind of doomed if we take them, and sometimes it appears that we are taking them, right? But I think the collective wisdom of humanity is going to guide it eventually in the right direction. I think it's very hard to predict where humanity is going to get to, but I'm very optimistic, and the only sad thing about dying for me is to not be a part of that future.
With advances in robotics and 3D printing, we'll enter into a time several decades from now where manual labor is no longer necessary. This will usher in a new dawn for humanity, where we'll be able to focus on creative tasks and expanding our minds. Being human will never be the same, and that's a good thing.